welcome back to We Be Kids again. It's been over a year since I started recording stories like this for We Be Kids. We've now done over 50 stories and they're all available on our website at webekids.net. There are stories there about flowers and fairies and trees and birds, but all stories about nature that help us learn more about nature and connect with nature as well. In this week's story, I'm going to tell you an old tale, one of Aesop's fables, and it is called The Boy and the Nettle. And this story happened off in the English countryside many years ago, where a young boy lived in a small white cottage up on the hills with his grandmother. And one morning, they were having breakfast together, and the grandmother said to the boy, "Off in the fields by the stone walls there is a plant that every spring we can harvest, and it gives us the strength of 100 horses. And if we are to get ill during the year, it will always give us the medicine to make us well." She said, "Today, young boy, I want you to go off into the fields and find this special plant. This plant is called the nettle." And she went on to describe what the nettle was like. She said it has a long green stem. It has leaves that are shaped like diamonds with serrated edges, and both the stem and the bottom of the leaf are covered with tiny little hairs. And she handed him a bag and said, "Head off up into the fields and do not return until that bag is full." And the young boy ran out of the door, filled with excitement to find this magical plant. And he walked up onto the hills, and on his way up onto the hills, he bumps into a rabbit. And the rabbit said to the boy, "Where are you going on this fine, fine day?" And the boy said, "I am going to pick a plant that will give us the strength of 100 horses and give us medicine to fix any ailment all year round." And the rabbit said, "Oh, what is the name of this plant?" The boy said, "The plant is called the nettle." And the rabbit's ears drooped down and its nose began to twitch. And the boy looked at him and said, "Why do you do that with your ears?" And the rabbit said, "Oh, the nettle. It may give you the strength of 100 horses, but it is called the stinging nettle, because when you touch its leaves, it will sting you like the bite of a snake." The boy felt filled with fear at this, and the rabbit ran away. And the boy continued his walk up onto the hills until he got to the side of the dry stone wall, and there, in big, big bunches, he came across the nettle. Now, by this time, he'd been thinking about what the rabbit had said, and he was filled with fear. He didn't want to be stung, not if it felt like the bite of a snake. But he remembered the words of his grandma, "Do not return until the bag is full." And he reached down, and filled with fear, he gently put his hand out, almost expecting the bite, and gently touched the leaf of the nettle. And as his hand brushed against the nettle leaf, he felt the sting in his fingers, the sting like the bite of a snake. He screamed, "Ah!" He turned and ran across the field and down the hill and straight into the door of the beautiful white cottage where his grandma was sat at the table. She said, "What's the matter?" And he put the empty bag on the table and he said, "I was stung like the bite of a snake from that plant." "Ah," the grandma said, "yes, of course, the nettle will sting. But remember, this nettle will give us the strength of 100 horses and the medicine to cure any ailment." The boy said, "I'm not going back. I am not picking that nettle." And the grandma said, "But we need the nettle. We want the nettle. The nettle will give us all that we need throughout the whole year. And the boy said, but I am afraid of the nettle. And the grandma thought for a moment, and she drummed her fingers on the side of her face. And she said to the boy, when we are afraid, it is at that moment when we need our boldness. It is in that moment when we have to be courageous. Head back up into the fields with your bag and do not return until it is full. And the boy turned and he got the bag and he walked back up into the fields until he got to the side of the dry stone wall. The words of his grandma were ringing around in his head. Be bold, be courageous. And he stood in front of the nettles, and in his mind he could see the image of a slithering snake. But he took a deep breath. He puffed out his chest, and with all of his courage, he leaned forward, and without hesitation, he grabbed the nettles in his hand. And to his surprise, none of them stung. He pulled hard and he put them in his bag. And again, he grabbed hard. He pulled at them and he put them in his bag. He continued in this way with boldness and with courage until his bag was full. He looked and he had left enough of the nettles for the butterflies. He tied his bag and threw it over his shoulder and he ran all the way home. And when he burst through the door this time, he was filled with pride. He said, look, Grandma, the bag is full. And she said, and no sting? And he said, no, I was brave and I was bold and I was courageous. And the grandma nodded and she took the nettles and she put them on the table. And she said, these nettles will see us through the year. But what you have learnt today, the lesson that when we feel fear, we can overcome it with boldness and bravery and courage. That lesson will serve you for a lifetime. And with that, the boy sat down. The grandma tipped the nettles into the pan and began to make a beautiful nettle soup that together they enjoyed in front of a roaring fire. The sun set, the moon rose in the sky, and all was well. So I hope you enjoyed that story, The Boy and the Nettle, with a really, really, really interesting moral in that story. Often we feel fear about things in our lives. Even as an adult, I feel fearful when certain things come up, things that I'm not used to, or things that I know that I'm not very good at, or things that I could improve at. And it's easy to run away from them. But just like in the story, the boy was brave and bold and courageous. And because he was brave and bold and courageous, he got the things that he needed. So next time you're feeling fearful, or there's something that you're just not sure about doing, and you get those butterflies in your tummy, remember the story of the boy and the nettles. So hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for stopping by at We Be Kids. Again, look on the website webekids.net for many, many more stories and activities and crafts and yoga, all to help boost your well-being. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you again sometime soon. Bye.